Dixo presenta Other Space, Kill DAO with Garga. Hosted by Nana and Nova.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Other Space FM. It is Thursday, June 12th. My name is Nana. I got my co-host up here with me, Nova, and we're going to get Garga on stage today. Welcome to the episode Kill DAO Volume 1, featuring Crypto Garga. Yo, one of the first cheetah bored ape that minted on the Ethereum blockchain. Yo, super excited to have everyone here today. We're going to be talking about sunsetting the DAO and launching ApeCo. And, for the first bit, Nova, Garga, and myself will kick it off. And maybe toward the end, we'll allow some audience members to come up on stage, and we'll continue on with the show and really just milk this time that we have with Garga today. Want to check in with you, Nova. How you doing today?
Yo, GM, doing great. It's a beautiful day today. Sunny once again on the East Coast. Just excited for this space. Also saw the Garga's AIP now has an actual AIP number, AIP 596. So excited for that. We're getting pretty close here, guys. Pretty close.
And let's welcome our guest, Garga. How you doing, my friend?
Yo. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Amazing.
Man. Yeah. We've been hosting Other Space FM, kicked off with Baron since the first trip and have done this nearly every single week. And it's the first time having you on the space.
I know. I'm excited to be here. Obviously big fans of everything you guys have been building over at Other Space. Thanks for having me on.
Well, super, super excited to just talk about this idea that came up about a week ago. And it seems like it's shaping up. Nova, you briefly checked the forum. It looks like an AIP number has been established, and this AIP is going up for vote pretty soon. When is it going up for vote, by the way? Do you happen to know?
I don't know the time. My understanding is it'll be going up for vote later today, and it will be up for 2 weeks for people to vote on. So excited. Have been meeting with a lot of folks, either one-on-one or in group settings, or, DMing with some folks, just trying to, and doing a few of these spaces, just trying to get the word out about, what we're thinking of doing here.
And we appreciate you jumping on those spaces too. It was dope to have you kick it off last week with Rita, Dutchy, Gucci and the gang, and then hop in with Coffee with Captain, with Zwingli and Steve, and now you're here. So very excited to have you. Certainly the landscape has changed over the years since ApeCoin DAO launched. And, both Nova and I were really discussing the overall landscape of DAOs. And Nova, maybe give us like a general overview of kind of what you've observed as of late.
Yeah, definitely. So we have been seeing DAOs kind of start to slowly, I guess the word wind down comes to mind, right? So Polygon recently announced their founder, Sandeep, that he's taking full control of the Polygon Foundation, right? We've seen the Blast DAO basically get shut down. And I guess Garga, obviously also, I've read the A16Z article as well, and kind of listened to some good takeaways there. Do you feel like DAOs are an invention from an old era, Garga? And do you foresee a lot more being shut down in the near future here?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And I don't think there's like a one-size-fits-all approach here. I do think that ApeCoin DAO for a long time, is almost like a social DAO is almost how I would categorize it, where you had all this energy born out of the Bored Ape Yacht Club, and people were vying for different proposals across a range of different things, everything from protocols that just wanted to accept ApeCoin or help promote it in some way, to people trying to start up, their own businesses or animation or other things that just are one way or another tangentially related to Ape or the BOIC ecosystem. And I think the most successful DAOs that we've seen are have a much more narrow remit. You got stuff like, these DeFi and these old school kind of DeFi 1.0 protocols that have DAOs, but they're really, the DAO is there to kind of decide on fee switches or some really big macro like treasury moves. It's not the same kind of thing where anyone and everyone is, proposing all manner of stuff. You just don't see that kind of thing on the Compound or Uniswap or, a lot of these kind of more protocol focused DAOs. And I think as ApeCoin has evolved and ApeChain has launched, we have a chance here to kind of set a new tone. Now we have this permissionless blockchain that anyone can write to and experience. And we should take advantage of that. There's way more ways to get involved in the ape ecosystem now than just proposing something to the DAO. Now anyone can launch on chain and meet with our community there, and we can help bring energy to them on chain.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely, I mean, the DAO, I will say we have seen some, a really broad range of AIPs come out of the DAO, some very bizarre ones, that I'll just mention a few here, like things like, buying BMWs to like ape theme hotels to all kinds of stuff, right? Was there a moment, Garga, a certain moment we've made it clear to you that the DAO model just was no longer working for ApeCoin?
It's a good question. I don't, it's interesting. I mean, look, we launched ApeCoin as a community like 4 years ago, 3.5, and since then, there's just been a whole evolution of the meta around tokens. We didn't know enough to make people kind of work for their bags. The whole drawing out a TGE for a year, getting people to farm it and do particular things. Dangling a carrot of points or XP or what have you. And, in a lot of ways, we were trying to create something as pure and straightforward as, we could and as like the regulatory environment would allow for. No ICO. The only way to get tokens was to own a Bored Ape or a mutant and get an extra airdrop for having kennels. And I think a lot, for so much for us and for so much of our community, it was like this was the first DAO that they were going to be part of. And so like we were all figuring it out together. And obviously then we were dealing with the SEC basically trying to kill all crypto in the US and, the FTX going under and Terra Luna and just, what felt like solid ground all of a sudden was like melting away around everybody. And, my focus, especially the past year since coming back as CEO, has been to try and like reinstill a way of shipping and narrowing our focus on BOIC, on other side, and to a big extent on ApeCoin and ApeChain. But we're really kind of navigating this thing it's, trying to drive from the back seat. We got involved on ApeChain after the DAO had already voted for it. It was already kind of a bit underway. But frankly, if we hadn't gotten involved a year and a bit ago, I think ApeChain would have been like nowhere near as successful as we were able to make it. And the reality, though, is like if we look at the history, I think it's a little painful to think about. But if we had been involved from day one and just architecting the thing, I think it would be even more powerful and in a better place today. And so as we're looking to the future here, we have an administration that wants crypto in the US to win. Kind of the SEC's boot is off the neck of our space. And we have a chance now to like seize the moment and move quickly and just start winning again. And so I think over the past 2 weeks or so, we saw a lot of energy on the timeline around the special council elections that were going on or set to go on soon. And the kind of overwhelming voice that or message that was coming through to me was, hey, why don't we just sunset this thing and find a new operating model for ApeCoin that keeps us leaner, more focused, and doesn't have, some of the same politics or infighting or popularity contests that have maybe plagued it in the past. And so, and wasn't planning on posting this AIP 2 weeks ago. I think, D Farmer's message spurred that, and but here we are.
Now, is the long-term goal to just eliminate DAO style governance entirely, or there might be like a hybrid future where ApeCoin reintroduces some kind of community-based participation? What are you thinking here?
I don't want to dangle anything like that if we're not ready for it. It's like, I think people are looking for a really clear message, and I think with ApeChain now, like, there's a very obvious way for community members to like get involved and build on chain. And what we need is just like just a more conventional operating model where it's like, here's a company. No, it doesn't, have stock or, owners in that sense. Its job as a company is to promote the ecosystem, but like, it's a company. It's like we just need to move fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there seems to be, I guess, some concerns that, I guess like builders are going to lose something that's brought them into the ApeCoin ecosystem. You mentioned in your AIP that builders will be supported, right? Can you give some details and clarity on how you envision builder support and what type of things they'll entail? Like maybe at a high level.
For sure. And so this is something I'm working on, kind of setting up with the team. I think one of the most successful things to kind of come out of the ApeCoin DAO was, ThinkApe was established, for example, and I think has helped find a lot of builders that aren't, at the AAA scale or, but they're super active and engaged, and helping them with rewards either to them, to their protocol directly or with rewards that help drive reach and engagement for their platform. And I think we need to set aside some amount of ape to keep something like that going. What I liked about that in particular too is that it wasn't like, it wasn't the same. ThinkApe was a smaller, more nimble operation that doesn't need to go and ask for funding for every little thing it does at the ApeCoin DAO level. And so, especially with like Dilly and some folks from the ThinkApe team, like having joined the foundation more recently, I think that is something that I want to see continue, and actually just bring it in-house. I think we'll have like a slimmer, we won't have to pay as much overhead basically if we do that. The other thing is we need to really focus around helping builders on ApeChain and on other side try and create revenue streams for themselves. Like there's been a world, as you kind of mentioned with ApeCoin DAO, where like it was almost seen as this slush fund for people to kind of try and go, fulfill their dreams. And the reality is, like, when we do that, that's a check that we're all paying in the end. When you add hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of ApeCoin of sell pressure for somebody who wants to, like you said, buy a car or whatever it is, like that's coming out of everybody's pocket in the end of the day. And so we need to be thinking about smaller check sizes and also deals and grants and things with people that like have experience doing what they say they're going to set out to do. The best way to light money on fire is, to let somebody get too far in over their head where they're trying to do something they have, frankly, no clue how to do. And also help them find ways to build in ways that are going to replenish the ecosystem fund in some way where, hey, this person is really going to be driving a lot of transaction volume or attention onto ApeChain, and so it makes sense to fund this. Or here's a third-party builder that wants to build their own game or experience or casino or whatever it is on top of other side. Like, and can we create a revenue share deal back with ApeCo so that it's continuing the flywheel that way?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I guess last question is about the builder support before we kind of move into the next set of questions here. What about Made by Apes? Do you see ApeCo being involved in supporting NBA builders as well? Or is NBA kind of being maybe like sunset or potentially kind of put on hold for a while? Kind of like, what's your vision there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one way that I can help Made by Apes holders over the next 12 to 18 months is to drive more attention and value to Bored Apes as a whole. I think if Bored Apes are at 20 ETH, that's way more attention and value towards people who are looking to create businesses and license out their Bored Apes for different things than if I were to pour that same amount of energy into, just trying to support Made by Apes. And so that's one of the hard questions that's kind of come up is we need to support all apes. And this is something that, if we do this right, I think it'll have a natural buoy effect for Made by Apes. But if we spend all of our energy trying to support Made by Apes and kind of leave the club behind, which is frankly a little bit of what I felt like might have been happening with, previous management at Yuga or what have you, then I think we're in the wrong spot. And so I think ApeCo can do a really good job of, look, if people want to seek funding as builders for Made by Apes projects, if they're built in such a way where there's a rev share back to ApeCo or it's driving attention or engagement onto ApeChain, like that makes a ton of money for ApeCo to fund. But if it's just driving Bored Ape IP and doesn't have any kind of share back to ApeCo, like frankly, I just don't know that if ApeCo should be writing that check because, again, that's a check that anybody with ApeCoin ends up feeling one way or another.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. Maybe Nana, I'll share with you now. Then you have a few questions about some other things you wanted to ask Garga here. So
yeah, for sure. You mentioned a little bit earlier, Garga, how Yuga. There's been a strategy that you've been having with Yuga to really focus and go all in on ApeChain, BAYC, and other side, and that seems to also be a strategic focus with ApeCo and how ApeCoin can actually support that. I kind of want to dig into those pillars right there and get your take on what success looks like for maybe each of the pillars, maybe starting with ApeChain. Like what does a win look like for ApeChain 12 to 24 months from now?
For sure. I think the most important thing with when you're building out an L2 ecosystem is to figure out what your moat is. What is it that we're going to be doing on ApeChain that nobody else can do? And inevitably, I look to a few things. I look to the strength of the NFT community that's born out of Bored Ape Yacht Club and that has been gaining steam and thriving on ApeChain since we launched, 6-7 months ago. And I also look to the future and I think about other side. Nobody's poured tens of millions into creating this kind of high, just the amount of things you can do on other side that you can't do in any other virtual world. And it's all on Web3 rails. You can run around other side and be picking up tokens, picking up coins like you're playing fucking Sonic or something like that. And each and every one of those is, can be an ERC20 token on ApeChain. And I think as we get more and more of other side online, what we're going to be able to do is open up a UGC layer for anybody to build a game, a virtual experience, a casino, whatever you want to build on top of other side. And I think that is the kind of moat that can enable a flywheel for ApeChain that like other people can't compete with. I get bearish when I think about an L2 ecosystem that doesn't have its own app that is like you're championing. I don't think it's enough to just focus on a on a UI UX layer or anything else like that, because frankly, L2s are pretty easy to spin up these days. We see another one every other month. And so my focus is much more on the app layer and enabling people to build on top of other side as like a super app than it is on, a lot of the same important things that we need to do, which is like make it easy to onboard, make it easy to get your cash on there, make it safe, secure, make it easy to discover new things on there. All that's super important, but I think what actually makes the difference in the end towards like a multi-year, multi-cycle chain is going to be the success of like the biggest apps on the chain.
Do you have maybe just a take on what you would imagine some killer apps would be? That would take ApeChain or even other side to the next level, or even apps or builders you're hoping to attract?
For sure, yeah. So for other side, we have a few ODK experiences that we're going to be rolling out over the summer. Bathroom Blitz, I think, is the only one that we've showed openly, but we've been playtesting a couple others internally that we're excited about. And having an experience, a game like that a single dev shop with, putting expenses in the tens of thousands and not the hundreds of thousands or millions, that can have a ready-made audience that has all the blockchain aspects figured out for you, I think is going to be super, super powerful. I think it's going to be powerful for skill-based kind of wagering systems, games where you can kind of bet on the outcome. I think it's going to be important for like the virtual casino space in crypto to start engaging with things in virtual worlds as well. And importantly too, I think it's also like whenever you have a UGC layer like that, like there's always going to be some things that you don't expect that can just happen. You can imagine a virtual pumped up fun experience where you're launching tokens from the metaverse and dispersing, the fair launch by people actually like in a skill-based way going around and collecting like the initial token launch or something like that. So I think we're just getting started with other side, and it will kind of remain to be seen what we get. I want to get AAA builders to see other side as like a safe space to come and launch their first game in Web3. Some of the biggest devs, we want to talk to many of the biggest devs in the world now that, they're not as scared of crypto as they might have been last year or the year before, to come do that. And I also want to give the tools to our community to come and make games and experiences on the other side.
Yeah, man. I mean, I personally loved the poker aspect, even throughout Project Dragon. It just happened to be those kind of social moments and mini games that I had probably the most fun in. And we play poker with each other online. Apin, Baka, his space, we're playing poker, but so much of it is facilitated just through having different platforms and communicating over here, and it's not fully on ApeChain rails, so I could totally see where this really comes together. And I would imagine that that's a huge value proposition for other side, is just being able to have those ApeChain rails so that we can have smart contracts executing, things that people can be doing to make the experience so much easier. Super excited about that, man. But all right, so one of the other pillars you mentioned with ApeCo is BAYC as well. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what success looks like there, as it relates to ApeCo?
Yeah, I think, we've had this huge firewall between BAYC from the Yuga side and ApeCoin, where, BAYC might integrate ApeCoin into things, but there wasn't as close of a relationship as, I don't know, where you see like Pudgy and Pengu and Pudgy are like literally the same thing in the eyes of like the devs, and it's the same people in control of things. And I think where ApeCo can help promote where that relationship can become symbiotic and help propel both Bored Ape and ApeCoin to new heights is going to be finding more special ways for people to participate and engage in, the broader club and the ethos of BOYC. By owning a Bored Ape, sure, but also owning and engaging with ApeCoin. I can't speak to, I'm working on a bunch of stuff in this world, so I don't really want to spoil what's cooking too much, but I just think it's important where in this new model, you're going to see ApeCoin, engaging with BOYC in a better way. And I think that BOYC can do more to help promote and support ApeCoin. And I think that will be good for the price of both projects, frankly.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned, I think, casino apps a few times. Obviously, you look at chains like Abstract and some of the others. Like, I think, it's basically like, mainly casino apps do extremely well, for obvious reasons. Are we going to see some casino games on the other side in the near future here? We're obviously already seeing poker, and some early versions of that, right? Do you feel like we'll see some other side casino apps in the near future here? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I'm super bullish on in general. I think it'll be important to nail that for other side to really break through. Is look, DGens want to fucking DGen out, and for other side to succeed, we need to cater to a bunch of different profiles and kinds of people. I think one of the promises of Web3 and crypto gaming that doesn't so much exist in the Web2 sphere is being able to, if you're really good at a game, actually getting paid in some form for that, rather than, having to become a streamer or a media personality or a podcaster about a game. It's actually being able to drive and generate value from things you're doing on chain in game. And so I think there's a few different ways that can look. I think that can look like, some of the skill-based wagering kind of components that you might associate with the reboot protocol. Or I think it can also potentially look at, poker or some other things that, we're cooking on that space. I think for casino to really work, I want to see third-party devs building on that, building on top of our platform. We don't have a tremendous amount of experience in that world at Yuga, and I think that's where this being a platform actually becomes really powerful and allowing other people to come build on top of it.
Yeah, very cool.
Does that make you happy, Nova? Because I know you love those casino games too, man.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think just poker alone would be probably enough for me. I don't really want to play slots. I just, just give me Texas Hold'em on the other side, and I'll probably spend quite a bit of time there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. I used to play, if you guys remember back in the day, party poker in the US was legal. I think George Bush made it illegal, and they shut all of the poker games down. And that was 20 years ago. So I'm hoping maybe we'll bring those back, and I think other side would be a perfect place for that. Cool. Well, I think maybe if we have time, Garga, we can maybe let a few people on stage to ask more questions, or unless you have to run here.
Yeah, I got another 15 minutes. I got a hard out at 2:50.
Sweet. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. If you want to come up, anybody, just request, and we'll let you up.
Yeah, I'm excited. Garga, with so many things happening, even amongst Yuga, amongst this concept of ApeCo, one of the things that I think really attracted me to this ecosystem, besides the community aspect of it, was a lot of people were invested in the same thing, and ApeCoin and the DAO was one of those enablers for so many builders. And I felt like we've been certainly at other page beneficiaries of the DAO to be able to have the ability to work on a really great concept and idea, feedback into the ecosystem. But there's also so many AIPs that have passed that have zero updates. And that's one of the things that I'm personally frustrated with. Like you kind of use the words of like, yeah, it's coming out of everyone's pocket in that sense. I'm curious on like your take on like accountability and how this particular position with APECO could potentially help change that.
Yeah, and I think there's two sides of that coin. There's the obvious one of like, okay, what can be done to go back, and can you claw back that money? Can you hold some people's feet to the fire? Can you make them accountable? Some people, they tried, they couldn't pull off whatever they did, and fair enough in the end. But other people really didn't even, it seems like it was an outright scam. And if someone's like, purporting fraud on the ApeCoin DAO, then we should be looking at, I'm not a lawyer, but we should be looking at ways to claw that back. I haven't seen those agreements, but that's one of the things that I think it would make sense for ApeCo to try and make some examples there. I think that would instill a lot of confidence back in it. And then from the kind of forward-looking side, I think that's one of the benefits of having a leaner operating model is, number one, only funding things that, folks feel confident in. I think the kinds of things that will get approved by ApeCo as opposed to, a DAO that has, its share of infighting or popularity conscious, that kind of thing, it's going to be a little bit different. And having really strict milestones, nobody's just getting, hundreds of thousands up front without claws into them. So 100%, I think that's on everybody's mind. And, from where I come at with this is I think we need to start ApeCo fresh with a lot of ways it's the same as like what private equity does when they take over something. What you saw with like Doge or with Elon's original takeover of Twitter or X, where it's like, okay, you start off by like just hitting pause on all the credit cards and things, all the payments, and you just start to see who's knocking at the door, being like, wait a second, pay me. Because I think I want to know exactly how much, the foundation or ApeCo is or has been spending, where that money's going, how much is going out every single week. I think if we can lower spend and just be more diligent just on the defense, I think we can already see a pretty significant rise in everybody's value. And then that also then opens up the opportunity for you to go on offense and actually like, fund awesome shit, create value for everybody, do dope partnerships and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I can confirm that in the DAO contracts for the AIPs, there is some clawback language for milestones not shipped. I'm not sure how long ago they actually added that. It might have been a relatively recent addition. But I've seen so far, I think like 0 clawbacks, right? So we haven't seen anybody give money back just yet. So maybe, that's one of the things maybe ApeCo can do, maybe kind of review some of those, delinquent AIPs and have them, give some of the money back to ApeCo.
Department of Ape Efficiency.
That's right.
Yo, let's welcome Adventurous Ape. What's up, Adventurous? Welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I had a question. I've been with the DAO now pretty much since the beginning, like pretty active. And like I've always kind of felt the structure was flawed. And it kind of was hard. Didn't really set us up for long-term success. So I do welcome some changes, definitely, and a new direction for this because has been frustrating. But there's been a lot of good along the way, and I hope that the baby doesn't get thrown out with the bathwater with this. Like I think it did help, like the community to become a little more involved and like feel like there was a place they could go, for funding. And I think that's been said a bunch of times. And I know on some of the other spaces that's been brought up that the comms could be better. And I want to echo that, that I hope that the new chapter, if this AIP passes, there's better comms that are more clear and consistent. But my question is, like, one thing I've often ran into was that the perception of like ApeCoin and ApeChain and the DAO funding was just for like bored apes. So with this new structure going more towards Yuga and centralization, like how will ApeCo and you ensure that like non-Yuga holders still feel included in the ApeCoin ecosystem? Because we need to grow outside of our bubble if we want to get bigger.
1,000% agree. In some ways, it's a little bit of a shame that ApeChain is called ApeChain, because it needs to be a place for everybody, and that's something that's really top of mind for me. I do think we've seen a bunch of different NFT communities sprout up on ApeChain that aren't Bored Apes, and we've seen people engage on ApeChain and then buy a mutant or a Bored Ape or something like that. But that's super top of mind for me. I think other side success is a big way that we can create space for other communities running on ApeChain, using ApeCoin and all that kind of thing. It was always, other side was always imagined as our way to kind of become a community of communities. And, we've seen that with Meebits and some other collections that will have their own islands that aren't kind of Yuga owned anymore, having their own space, their own games and experiences on top of other side. And all that's running on ApeChain, and all that's, and the currency of other side is on ApeCoin. So I don't have every answer for you there. I can just share, that it's super top of mind for us and something that we're thinking about.
Yeah. Are you thinking about an ApeChain rebrand potentially? It sounds like that's maybe on your mind based on what you said. Just wanted to kind of ask.
I'm thinking about a lot of stuff. There's nothing. Nothing set in stone. Yeah, I guess I'll just kind of leave it there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like my 2 cents is, I think the ApeChain is definitely not inclusive enough. I think Pudgy Penguins have abstract, Kazuki has anime chain. I do think broader appeal is something definitely something I'm sure you're probably thinking about, Garga, and I do encourage, I think that for us to think about that as well.
Yeah. No, Nova, this is definitely not, a foreign topic you and I have personally discussed as well. So, yeah, interesting to hear that. But let's say, if it's okay with you, Nova, unless you had a follow-up, let's say what's up to Dutchy.
How you doing, man? GM, good to speak with you again, Garga. So my question is really about, the big picture. I think when you understand someone's vision or a group of people's vision and their North Star, you can kind of understand what the rationale across multiple moves may be, and we can kind of unite under a direction. And so I've noticed on ApeChain a lot of verbiage leading towards the terms of culture, being a culture chain. And we know that Bored Ape has been kind of like a big leader in IP as well. And so I'm just wondering your thoughts on why you chose that, or maybe not you specifically, but why do you feel that that's a good direction? And what does success look like as far as winning in the culture category? And we know that other side is supposed to be the living room of the internet. So if we combine those visions across the club, other side and ApeChain, what does the future of culture look like in your eyes? And what's the grand vision if success is guaranteed theoretically?
Sweet. Yeah. I think Yuga's special sauce is in creative and storytelling and community. Gordon and I aren't devs by background or anything like that. We're writers. And I think a lot of the early magic of BAYC and a lot of what attracted people to other side was around, we always have a really strict kind of point of view with what we're doing. If you imagine a metaverse or a virtual world, compared to what's out there, you've got the sort of disembodied or legless creatures of Horizon worlds or whatever of Meta's stuff, and it's kind of trying to be for everybody. Whereas our feeling was always actually, if you have a really strict point of view and you make it something that you yourself would delight in, that actually that's the best way to like lock people into your world. Even with Bored Ape Yacht Club, it was, we tried to put a lot of stuff into it that we loved, echoes of punk rock and hip hop and a lot of like the surrealism and strangeness of I don't know, for me it was like Murakami, but more like a lot of short story writers that Wiley and I love. And I think even folks who didn't grow up obsessed with punk or hardcore or whatever it was, some of that stuff gets transmuted in the process and it becomes more accessible to everybody. And some of the my North Star for a lot of things with BOYC is how do we look at something like Stranger Things, where everybody loves Stranger Things. It's hilarious, it's fun, but it's taking things from 80s, from D&D, from kind of this whole other world, and transmuting them into this new thing that anybody can enjoy. And I think that's the space I like to play in, that brings me joy and we have fun with, is when we take, some old school or subcultural or cult favorite things from the past, old games, MMOs, all that kind of stuff, and we repackage it, we make it more accessible, we make it ownable via crypto and blockchain and that kind of thing. I think that's what gets people that's what gets me excited, and so I think that's what's everybody excited. And just makes it like more fun. At the end of the day, we've always charted our own path in crypto. When it comes to like IP, for us, it's not necessarily about getting Bored Apes everywhere. It's about trying to go deep and tell weird stories, have weird engagement, get people together in real life at Ape Fest and eventually the Clubhouse and that sort of thing, rather than just having more shallow or superficial relationships with the brand.
Yeah, I'm ready for my slick RFID card to get into that clubhouse, that non-100 story clubhouse.
Yeah, the non-delusional tower. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Garga, I know you have a heart out, and there's definitely more people on stage that probably have questions. So I apologize that we're going to definitely respect the time. Gabe, if you have a question to quickly fire off, please go ahead.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So I have a few questions for Garga. How you doing, Garga?
Yep.
Hopefully it's a quick
one
answer.
Question. Okay. So my question is, are you guys planning to work again with the heavy metal IP? Like, are you guys planning to integrate heavy metal back into other side? Because last time that I spoke with Alex, he told me that he messaged you guys like 7 months ago, and you guys basically ignored him. So what is the situation here? Like, do you guys want to keep working with heavy metal or not anymore?
I don't think we ignored him. I'll call up Alex later today and see what that was about. I think where we last spoke was some of the 3D models that they made needed a little bit more work to be accessible. We're trying to make Other Side as accessible to everybody. We've got Meebits and Moonbirds and all this kind of stuff on there. Like, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to get heavies into Other Side. I just don't think it's been a bit, we just need the right 3D models and we can't really do that for them. So, yeah, I can circle back up with Alex though, for sure.
Yo, thank you, Gabe, for that question. Proof of Alpha Giant, sorry we can't get to your question. We want to respect Garga's heart out as it's at the 50 mark. Garga, thank you so much for joining us, taking the time out to answer some questions from the community and hop on Other Space FM. Just any kind of outro, things you want to leave the space with.
Just thank you all for the support in this. Whenever we try and make a big change, it can be a little scary or rocky. So it's been great to see the amount of support and the groundswell around this idea. I think it can be a really, really strong move for everybody. And it'll be going up for vote, I think, later today and up there for 2 weeks. So vote with your wallet and hit me up in DMs if you have anything specific. I'll also try and be on a few more spaces next week. So I'm not going anywhere.
Let's go, baby. You know what? It's going up for vote. Y'all make sure to vote on AIP 596. Everyone, thank Garga for coming in today. Really appreciate you. And, everyone else, feel free to hang out. We're going to keep this going. Nova, anything?
I just want to say I appreciate you, Garga, for coming on this space, and hope to have you back here, in the near future here. And good luck with AIP. I'm sure, hopefully it won't be a battle to get it passed, but most likely it's going to pass, I think. Very good chance. So good luck.
Cheers. All right. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thanks for listening to Ape Chain on Chain. This project is powered by the ApeCoin DAO through AIP 572. Bringing our community's valuable conversations on chain and also on traditional audio platforms. Rate this episode and/or leave feedback and earn Dixo rewards by visiting the Dixo on-chain platform.